Hi, I'm Trevor Stevenson, and welcome to Your Story Will Be Different. This is a narrative play podcast where I tell you the story that came to be from a playthrough of a solo tabletop role-playing game. For this session, we're playing Lone Eons by David Blandy, which is a science fantasy solar punk journaling game where you are emerging from your people's haven and seeing how the world has changed over the last thousands of years. With that said, let's dive right in. Doompus Glebe had no idea what dawn would look like when he emerged from the cave. He'd only heard of the tales of the surface from the sojourners in his subterranean world. But here he was, staring up at the ceiling of the world as it opened up above him like shimmering gold. For most of his life, he'd only known the hush of shifting stone and the pulse of haven caverns. It was the only home he and the generations before him had ever needed. But when he begrudgingly revealed to his parents that he was in fact a shifter, they immediately took him before the Haven's council. A few council sessions later, he was taken under the wing of the Sojourners. As a youth, he had known them to be great storytellers, relaying the bizarreness of the surface world. But this new tutelage revealed that they were sent out by the council to find resources and allies. Sojourners were duty-bound to help people and the community while keeping it all safe. One of the elder Sojourners told Doompus that since he was a shifter, he would stand an even greater chance of success. Doompus had felt his flesh inadvertently, perhaps reflexively, change to a different texture and color at the time. And then he understood. Looking at the other Sojourners in front of him, he took inventory of how many had scars and healed wounds. Some even had missing limbs from their journeys to the surface world. Or as he came to know, his predecessors called it the intersection. His gift would give him a natural camouflage. A whisper that was neither instinct nor memory grew in his heart. He began to understand the sacrifices others had made for him without his knowledge, and Doompus knew that he had to repay the Haven. A deep summons of duty filled him. No prophecy had named him or conscription bound him, and yet when the moment came, he rose on his own, tightened the straps of his modest pack, and walked toward the glowing mouth of the surface tunnels. He expected to feel fear as he took in the intersection. Instead, standing beneath open sky for the very first time, he felt awe. The surface welcomed him with sights his mind stretched to understand. The air was rich with warm spores, carrying scents his cave-born body struggled to parse. The ground was soft and wild beneath his feet, and there was more vegetation in front of him than he had ever seen in his life. His eyes took minutes to adjust to the bright orb in the sky, but he quickly came to enjoy the delicate warmth that embraced him from it. He began to notice the fauna as well. He saw strange flashing insects drifting in the air like sparks from a faraway fire. The Sojourners had told him that the surface dwellers built structures to keep the elements at bay, and that would be the best place to start his searches. Doompus took his first steps by finding paths other creatures had used for traversal and followed. He came across dwellings that had been long abandoned, and inside one of the less demolished ones, Doompus stumbled upon his first gift of the world above: armor. He was old, dusty, and weathered by time, but had clearly been left reverently on a stone. It had resin and fiber interwoven into clothes clearly worn by someone who had gone far, returned safely, and wished for further adventures. Doompus realized he was helping fulfill someone's wish as he slipped the armor over himself and felt the weight of another's history settle across his shoulders. Near the settlement was something Dumpus had hoped to see in this bizarre landscape: a forest. He was enjoying the towering flora when there came a rustle from the underbrush nearby. Out stepped a bipedal creature and his first surface dweller. It revealed itself to be a being unlike anything from the caverns. It was diminutive, smaller than he was by half, but Dumpus found it beautiful in an uncanny way. It had subtle fur rippling under its skin, and a single iridescent feather sprouted from its head like a crown. Dumpus's skin shifted slightly to match the colors of the creature's feather, and its eyes shone with a clever friendliness.
I can tell that you walk with purpose, but you should take heed of your surroundings, especially given the ill tidings in the world these days.
Dumpus listened carefully.
I've heard that Cryorg is mining again.
The creature leaned closer.
They are tearing open the earth to drink from its rare veins, but they seek more than minerals. They are hunting for havens, deep places where I know your kind still sleeps.
Dumpus's breath caught. How could it know of the Haven Caves? Before he could ask, the creature only smiled, touched his hand with a furred paw, and slipped back into the foliage. The historians in the Haven had told stories of Cryorg. As his people under the rock had understood it, around 8,000 years had passed since the dominant species of the planet segregated itself. The ancestors of the Cryorg had left this world for a red planet, but had used all of its resources and began sending reaping parties back to this world. If what this creature told Dumpus was true, he had to keep his people safe, and the weight of duty grew heavier. On the other side of the forest, a plume of smoke led Dumpus to a small, fortified village. Its walls were patched with chitin, bone, and living vines. As he walked through, slowly, children stepped out to meet him. But children was only a convenient word. They were wrought flower children, sprouting fungal blossoms from their skulls, their skin molted like old petals, and their bodies chitinous and horned. Dumpus only labeled them as such because their eyes held the naivete of youth and the painful sorrow of abandonment.
You're not from here,
they said, circling him with a cautious wonder. I am not. Are you alone? Where are your elders? A murmur spread among the children, and one fought back tears with black fungus creeping down her cheeks.
There's something big that comes at night. It flies almost silently. We haven't seen the grown folk in days. Some of us fear it ate our parents.
That feeling of duty shifted in Dumpus. I'll see what I can find, children. Can you tell me which way it flew from? One child pointed off at an outcropping on the horizon. Dumpus noted and moved toward that direction, but found the hand of the child wrapped around his own. His skin shifted to the pigment of the child as he kneeled to meet eyes with her. She offered him a tangled charm of homemade beads.
A lucky trinket. We'll give it to you for now, and if you find them, or find what happened, you may keep it.
Dumpus accepted. Half a day later, the trail to the creature's nest was obvious. Each footprint the creature had left behind was deep and ragged, clawed like a bird's, but far too large for anything that should still survive in this era. Torn bark, shredded leaves, and a trail of white-gray feathers coated in sticky resin told Dumpus he was close. Even the smaller creatures seemed to avoid this area. Doompus crouched by a gnarled root as he found the first sign of a feeding site. Bones, snapped clean through with a piece of tattered cloth still caught in the mulch. He touched the cloth and let the shifting instincts ripple beneath his skin. His senses sharpened, his vision contracted to a hunter's pinpoint clarity. The scent of the creature lingered, musky and metallic, and carried a sour tang of desperation. This was indeed a parent defending its nest, and in its fury, it had become indiscriminate and proactively aggressive. The wind shifted, and a shadow crossed over him. Doompus rolled aside just as the creature stooped from above, wings carving through the air with barely a sound. It landed in a spray of dirt and leaves, its talons gouging through furrows in the soil. The beast was magnificent and terrible. Six-limbed, feathered in places but patchy in others, with its face elongated into a hooked beak slick with fresh blood. Its wings were vast. Half were thick and molted with fungus. The others were thin and translucent. Each beat stirred up a storm of spores that shimmered like the dust in a fading light. The rot flower children had been right to be afraid. This thing could devour an adult whole. It lunged before Doompus could finish the thought. He darted left, feeling his bones soften and shift as he slipped partially into a more agile form. Talons screeched across his resin armor, tearing deep grooves and leaving a stinging burn among his ribs. Doompus retaliated with a thrust of his makeshift spear, striking just beneath the creature's wing hinge. It shrieked, a piercing and metallic sound that rattled his teeth, and then it reared back, wings flaring wide as it prepared to launch itself into the air. He knew that if it got airborne again, he wouldn't stand a chance. He gathered his strength and leapt forward, seizing a feathered limb with both hands, and he let his body fully shift into the stronger, denser form he used for subterranean climbing. He felt his muscles harden, tendons reknit, and with a roar, he wrenched the creature downwards. They crashed together in a violent tangle of feathers, claws, and a snapping beak. The creature's hot blood sprayed across Doompus's face, and in the heartbeat that followed, his vision blurred and his surroundings dissolved. He found himself looking at a small hut, sunlit in the middle of a quiet field. 5 humanoids warmed their hands by a fire, spoke softly to each other, peacefully unaware of any dangers. He saw the rot flower children finding refuge there, embracing without fear. And then the image flashed and vanished as the creature thrashed beneath him. He forced himself back to reality and drove the spear deep into the creature's chest, and he felt a shudder of its final breath. It collapsed, and its wings folded slowly, like wilting leaves. Doompus staggered back, panting. The last echoes of the vision faded from his sight, and he wiped the creature's shimmering blood from his face as he rose to his feet. The rot flower children were waiting, and their futures were now tangled in the vision he had just seen. He whispered a promise into the cooling air. I will find them this home.
Will they take us? Will they be kind?
Doompus nodded to the rot flower child. I will speak to them. The path toward the hut of his vision wound through a thicket of pale-barked trees, whose branches grew in spirals and twisted like the ribs of an ancient beast. Doompus walked slowly, letting instinct pull him along the forest pulse, until the trees thinned and a clearing opened before him into a field. At the center stood the hut exactly as he had seen it from his vision. It was a simple dwelling of woven purple reeds and clay, smoke curling from a squat chimney, and tools hung neatly along the outer wall. The 5 humanoids lived exactly as the vision had shown, Doompas approached with caution, his hands open, his voice steady as he explained the plight of the children, the ruined village, and the creature he had felled. The family exchanged glances, sorrowful, resigned, and determined. They had lost their own kin in the past to famine, to predators, to the strange diseases that sometimes drifted in with the season. But their grief had softened them, and they agreed to take the children in. One of them pressed a small woven bracelet into Doompas' palm to express their unspoken plea that he return safely with the little ones. Doompas bowed, the gesture of appreciation in the haven. He had not walked far from the hut when the hairs along the back of his neck rose. The forest behind him hummed faintly. Too faintly for anything large, yet the sensation of eyes on his spine persisted. He turned slowly, ready to shift if needed. Instead of an ambusher, a small fungus-coated figure stepped from behind a cluster of thick roots. Its limbs were spindly, its carapace cracked in places, and bioluminescent vapors drifted from its joints with every movement. I was following. Lost. Too lost. Doompas concluded that the being was a drone, but it was degraded and disoriented. The drone had clearly been separated from the fungal network that had once guided its purpose. Doompas knelt to meet its dim, glowing eyes, offering calm, steady words. The drone twitched, then beckoned him deeper into the woods with a jerky tilt of its head. The drone led him to a hillside slick with orange moss and overgrown brush. Doompas noticed with a sudden heaviness that the plants had been placed intentionally, bushes arranged in unnatural symmetry, vines trained to run sideways, an illusion that had been crafted over years. He brushed aside a curtain of draped leaves and discovered a dark opening. A tunnel mouth choked by roots, hiding an entrance into the earth. Inside, the air was colder but thick with fungal spores. Doompas felt a pang of homesickness until the shape stirred in the dimness. Drones. Dozens of them, wandering about without purpose. Their organic metallic limbs sagged under layers of fuzzy growth. They moved as though listening to a song just beyond his hearing, but none of them looked at Doompas as he approached. They were indifferent, not hostile, simply directionless, their minds stripped of the synchronizing hum of the network that had once given them clarity. And then another vision struck Doompas. For a moment, the tunnel dissolved into a blinding white light. Doompas saw the drone seized by steel claws descending from above. Cryorg reclamation machines, shredding metal, siphoning biomass, reabsorbing everything they deemed property. The drones did not scream. They simply vanished, piece by piece, into reclamation vaults. Doompas staggered, his breath caught in his throat. The drones around him drifted closer, forming a loose ring of silent witnesses. He warned them of the Cryorg assault. He told them of what he had seen, though he did not know if they understood or even heard. One drone lifted its head toward him. Thank you. Doompas blinked. Whether it was gratitude or simply a glitch in failing biocircuitry, he couldn't tell. But he bowed his head in respect all the same. Maybe his message would give the drones a purpose again. Back outside, the sunlight felt harsher and the surrounding forest smelled more alive. Doompas moved on, heart heavy with visions of the future he could not prevent, only witness. The intersection was stranger and more wounded than he had imagined, and it was only growing more tangled the further he went. Just outside of the colony's entrance, something wrapped around Dumpus. Bindweeds soon entangled him and stripped away parts of his resin armor. Fighting back the terror of the unknown, Dumpus ripped free with effort, emerging scraped, but smarter and wiser for the encounter. Standing still was not a good idea. As he looked at the fresh damage to his armor, he was thankful that it had remained, and reminded him that the dangers of the intersection were both overt and hidden. After uniting the Rotflower children with the humanoid home, he continued on his quest. The forest changed gradually at first, almost shyly, as though uncertain whether Dumpus was worthy of what it was about to reveal. He noticed the towering everroots thickened and twisted upward, and their trunks broadened until they resembled walls carved by ancient giants. Vines the width of his arm spiraled around them, pulsing faintly with a bioluminescent sap that glowed through the bark like veins under translucent skin. He noticed the air grew richer and was saturated with drifting, fleeting specks of gold. This wasn't spores, he realized, but tiny parasitic organisms that fed on sound, making the whole forest hum with a muffled, dreamlike quiet. And then he saw it. A single tree rose above the canopy like a mountain wearing a crown of clouds. Its trunk was wider than the entire Haven cavern system Dumpus had grown up in, and its roots spread across acres of earth before plunging deep into the ground. The texture of the bark shifted as he approached, rigid at the base, smoother higher up, then patterned with natural terraces, forming ring-shaped platforms spiraling towards the sky. Fungi and mosses of every color imaginable dotted the surface, glowing softly like lanterns guiding pilgrims. And it was with a sudden wash of awe that he realized the tree was not only enormous, it was inhabited. Wooden stairways wound along the trunk, some carved directly from the bark, others grown or shaped from living vines that were coaxed to be permanently rigid. Bridges stretched between branches thick enough to walk upon, draped with luminous nests of mycelium that swayed like curtains. Small alcoves cut into the wood housed baskets of goods, tools, and trinkets. Higher up, faint music drifted down, the ripple of wind chimes made from hollow fungal tendrils. Dumpus had heard stories of surface settlements, but nothing had prepared him for a city grown from a single living organism. He approached the base platform cautiously. A group of tree dwellers lounged there, their bodies marked with a swirling green patterns that shifted subtly. As Dumpus looked at other residents nearby, almost all of them had these living tattoos, and he surmised that it was some kind of symbiosis. They glanced at Dumpus, then returned to their various tasks. One was weaving resin fibers into rope, one was repairing a net, and another was stirring a pot that emitted a smell halfway between mint and molten metal. Their nonchalance told him visitors were not uncommon, but their lack of alarm also comforted him. Dumpus made a mental note that not all surface beings reacted with hostility. A young woman, though woman was only an approximation, guided him upward on a spiraling ramp. Her limbs were elongated and supple, and her hair braided with slender vines that blossomed tiny purple flowers. She spoke little, but when she did, Her voice carried a soothing chime, as if produced by her environment rather than any type of vocal cord.
Follow the footpath. Drink nothing offered by strangers. City tree has moods. Today calm.
Dumpus nodded, uncertain whether the last sentence was meant as a warning or a simple observation. Higher up, nestled in a hollow the size of a large hall, Dumpus discovered a tavern carved directly into the heartwood. Warm sap dripped down the walls in slow, shimmering rivulets, and some were being collected and served. Tables were fashioned from cross-sections of old branches, and their growth rings formed hypnotic spirals. Patrons sipped from mugs filled with glowing liquids, which was presumably dangerous for anyone from the haven. Dumpus slipped into a stool near the entrance, his attention shifting towards a trio of locals who leaned over a fungal lantern, clearly in the middle of an intense conversation.
Uragal are restless,
one murmured.
Restless,
Another hissed.
ready to burst. The reclamation quotas are strangling them.
A third nodded grimly.
The revolt grows. It will be violent. Just wait. Something will break soon.
The name Uragal stirred no memories in Dumpus, yet the tension in their voices pulled at him. He tried to pull himself closer. They say Cryor guys are everywhere, even among the vendors. In the street performers, the populace plans to rise, but with no leader, madness. Dumpus kept still, absorbing their words. A rebellion. Cryoric influence spreading like poison. The humans and non-humans alike were living in fear. The implications spiraled outwards, intersecting with rumors he'd already heard. The mining operations seeking havens, rogue drones awaiting reclamation, unfortunately, children disappearing under winged shadows. The world above was cracking along its seams, and he was walking directly along the fault line. The tavern lights flickered as a deep rumble passed through the tree, a sound like distant thunder, but with an organic timbre, as if the tree itself had exhaled. As he descended the ramp back towards the forest floor, he realized this place was alive. Not just the tree, but the politics, the fears, and the whispered revolts. We'll go ahead and leave the story there for now, and we will conclude it next time. Thank you again for listening to Your Story Will Be Different. Hey, if you're not already following this podcast on your social media platform of choice, I just want to let you know that Your Story Will Be Different is available on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Feel free to follow there to not only see what's coming up next, but also to reach out and let me know how your playthroughs of solo TTRPGs are going. I put a link in the show notes to Lone Eons, so that way you can play it for yourself. And feel free to reach out on those social media channels we just talked about to let me know how your playthrough is going. But just remember, your story will be different.